Okay, hello Cloud Gurus and welcome to this lecture. In this lecture, we're going to look at Amazon's Aurora. So what is Aurora? Well, basically it's a MySQL compatible relational database engine that combines the speed and availability of high-end commercial databases with the simplicity and cost effectiveness of open source databases. And Amazon Aurora provides up to 5 times better performance than a MySQL database at a price point 1/10 of that of a commercial database while delivering similar performance and availability. So Amazon actually built Aurora from scratch themselves. It's completely compatible with MySQL as well as PostgreSQL, and it is pretty impressive technology. So the things to know about Aurora is you can start with a 10 gig instance, and it scales in 10 gig increments all the way up to 64 terabytes in size. And your compute resources can also be scaled up to 32 vCPUs as well as 244 gigs of memory. Now, the really cool thing about Aurora is that it always maintains 2 copies of your data in each availability zone with a minimum of 3 availability zones. So you're always going to have 6 copies of your data spread across 3 availability zones. So Aurora is only going to be available in regions that have 3 availability zones. So do bear that in mind. It's not available in every region just yet. And in terms of scaling Aurora, it's designed to transparently handle the loss of up to 2 copies of your data without affecting the database write availability, and up to 3 copies without affecting read availability. So it is extremely highly available. And at the time of recording, I've not yet heard of an Aurora database going down, certainly not the Aurora service itself. So it is got a really, really good track record. Aurora's storage is also self-healing, and the data blocks and disks continuously are scanned for errors and they're repaired automatically. And then with Aurora, you get read replicas as well, and you get 2 different types. You get the Aurora replicas, and there's currently 15 available. And then you can also have MySQL read replicas of your Aurora database, and there's currently 5. And this is a table that compares the 2. So we've got our Amazon Aurora read replicas, and we've got our MySQL database read replicas. And just notice the automated failover. You can automate a failover from one Aurora database to an Amazon Aurora read replica, and that is automated. Whereas if you have a MySQL database as your read replica, you cannot automate a failover for that. In terms of backups with Auroras, automated backups are always enabled on Amazon Aurora DB instances. Backups do not impact database performance, and you can also take snapshots with Aurora, and this also does not impact performance. And you can actually share your Aurora snapshots with other AWS accounts. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just quickly going to pop over to the console, and we're going to create an Aurora read replica of our RDS instance. Okay, so here I am in the AWS console. You can see that my RDS instance, my read replica, has been deleted successfully. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go in here and I'm going to go to Actions, and I'm going to go ahead and create an Aurora read replica of my RDS instance. And this is going to take my MySQL database and it's going to make it an Aurora read replica. And you can create the replica in a different availability zone if you want. I am going to do that. I'm just going to call my DB instance identifier a Cloud Guru Aurora. And then I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to leave basically everything else as default. I'm not going to turn on encryption. I'm going to leave backups on for 1 day. And I'm going to go ahead and create my read replica. And so that is now creating an Aurora read replica. And you can see it in here. So we've got a Cloud Guru Aurora cluster, and it's going ahead and creating my read replicas, which are a read replica of this. So that is going to take some time. So I'm just going to pause the video and wait for this to come back up online. Okay, so that has now finished, and you can see here we've got our Aurora cluster, and inside our cluster we've got 2 nodes. We've got a writer node, and then we've got a reader node. And you'll notice that they're in separate availability zones. And if we click on the writer node and actually click inside it, we'll be able to see the DNS endpoint. The writer node has a different DNS endpoint to the reader node. So they are definitely separate databases in separate availability zones with separate DNS endpoints. Now what you can do is you can go over to your writer node, and you can go to Actions, and then you can go and promote this read replica. So you can go ahead and you can do this to the reader node as well. I am going to promote this read replica. I'm just going to go ahead and do that now. That, again, is going to take a little bit of time. But once that's done, essentially what's happened is that we have migrated our database from a MySQL database to an Aurora database simply by creating a read replica and then promoting that database to its own standalone database. Another thing we can do is we can go in and take a snapshot of our Aurora database, and then we can restore a new Aurora database from that snapshot. So there's a few ways in which you can migrate your MySQL workloads to Aurora, but the great thing is it doesn't involve any, you don't have to go in and copy from one database to another. Amazon take care of it all for you. You can do it all through the management console. So feel free to go back to your databases section if you don't want to wait for that instance to be promoted to a primary instance, and feel free to go through and start deleting your clusters as well as your MySQL database. We don't need them anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and stop and hit stop, and then I'm going to go through and delete that as well. Also, don't forget to go over to EC2 and to delete your EC2 instance as well. So onto my exam tips. So going into your exam, just remember what Aurora is at a high level. It's Amazon's own proprietary database that's compatible with MySQL as well as PostgreSQL, and 2 copies of your data is contained in each availability zone with a minimum of 3 availability zones. So you'll always have 6 copies of your data. Remember that you can share Aurora snapshots with other AWS accounts. And remember that there's 2 types of replicas available. We've got Aurora replicas and MySQL replicas, and automated failover is only available with Aurora replicas. We also learned that you can do migrations from MySQL to Aurora simply by creating read replica and promoting it, or you can do it by creating a snapshot and then restoring from that snapshot as well. And then Aurora has automated backups turned on by default, and you can also take snapshots with Aurora, and you can share these snapshots with other AWS accounts. So that's it for this lecture, guys. In the next lecture, we're going to go ahead and look at Elasticache, and then we're almost finished this section of the course. So if you've got the time, please join me in the next lecture. Thank you.